Hey everyone, welcome to the Healthcare Provider Happy Hour. I'm your host, Jennifer George, and I'm joining you this evening with a couple of special guests. They are Giacomo and Ryan of Allied Health Financial, and they've started this educational platform for healthcare professionals in Canada to be more aware of their finances, to have greater ease talking about their finances and having the conversation around them, and also empowering them to take action where they're at right now. So grab your drink of choice, join us, and you don't want to miss this episode. Welcome to the Healthcare Provider Happy Hour. This is a safe space where we invite healthcare providers to unapologetically be themselves after the working day. My name is Jennifer George, and each week I will connect you with guests and stories that will help transform your stress to success and fulfillment. Are you with me? Grab your drink of choice and let's chat. Hi, Giacomo. Hi, Ryan. Welcome to the show. How are you guys?
Oh,
We're great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Just as we were chatting a moment ago, I was excited to bring you on, and I'm honored that you guys agreed to come on, just because I love what you're doing right now in the allied health space and the financial space, bringing the two together. So I think our guests, or our listeners, I should say, will get a lot of value out of what you guys have to share today, especially looking at finances from like a self-care standpoint. So something a little different than maybe what you might see out there as much. So tell me a little bit about you guys. What are you drinking right now?
It's just water for me right now.
Same. Awesome. And
of water right now.
Oh, nice. All three of us then. Can you guys tell me a little more about who you guys are without telling me so much about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ryan. I have been a physiotherapist working in Toronto in private outpatient practice since 2014 after graduating from U of T at that time. And I have been doing a little bit of investing ever since I graduated.
Awesome. And what about you, Giacomo?
Yeah, so my name is Giacomo. I also live in downtown Toronto. I try to do this without saying what I do. It's hard. I am married. I have a beautiful, much more intelligent than me wife. We have a little dog as well, a little miniature schnauzer named Heidi. And yeah, those are really all the other things other than what I do, which is a little sad maybe, but that's me in a nutshell.
I can confirm all of those statements are accurate.
Okay. I appreciate your genuinity around all of that. You guys are both very authentic. So that's one thing you could definitely say about who you are. So tell me guys, like, what inspired this? What inspired the Allied Health Financial?
Yeah, well, Ryan and I have been good friends since we were doing our master's together. And when we were in school, I started getting a little bit of an interest in personal finance. And I knew that Ryan had a background in finance with some summer jobs and had a very big, deep interest in it. So I kind of asked him to show me a few things. And then from there, we kind of started learning about things and, you know, always had an interest and would talk about whether it was, you know, different stocks or savings or whatnot. It was just something that Ryan and I really connected on after he kind of showed me the ropes to start. And we would notice that in both of our respective workplaces, a lot of really, really, really intelligent, talented people were having some, what we thought were very kind of basic questions on finance and, you know, asking us, you know, what should we do? What do you think of this? And so we both kind of sat down and realized, this isn't because people can't grasp this intellectually. They're clearly very, very intelligent people. It's just maybe they just don't know where to look. So since we had an interest and a passion in this, we decided to, let's try and see what we can put out there and see if it's of interest to allied health professionals. And it seems to have been going pretty well so far, I'd say. It's been a fun little journey to this point.
That's awesome. So this was purely out of personal interest at the time. It wasn't like you took a business class in school or something and it triggered something.
No, I would say that this definitely came up from recognizing just the lack of financial literacy that was occurring among our colleagues, and we recognized that we had a little bit of an area where we could help educate some people in this and hopefully help save a lot of people and future therapists and all healthcare practitioners, kind of the hundreds of hours that we put in, and help them get a leg up on their financial journey.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. And I don't know, I haven't been in school in a while. You guys just graduated in 2014. So has the schooling around like financial management, like in physio school, is there any course offerings on that now? Because there never was, but when I was there.
A business component to it, so it's starting to become part of the curriculum. But I think a lot of it, from what I remember, the biggest thing I remember is that we spent what felt like countless hours learning how OHIP worked, which I haven't thought about since we finished those classes. But it's one of those things that I think is still lacking in physio school, and I'm sure it's very similar in other professions as well. And I think it's one of those things where it's a tough thing for the universities to tackle, because they have so much to cover already. It's and every healthcare field is like this. There's so much to learn. That is personal finance really something that they're going to be able to tackle effectively? So I think it's still lacking in the traditional curriculum, but I think if we can expand the kind of side curriculum, I guess, and have other ways for healthcare practitioners to learn, it'd be huge.
Yeah, that's a good point you make, because really when we're in school and we're doing our specialty, like for instance in physio, it's all about patient care, right? It's more about competency and safety and knowledge around the patient and conditions and treatment. But this would be more designed for the practitioner themselves or the professional themselves. So are there any facts or stats like on the impact of financial hardships or financial health on actual professional burnout?
So this is a really interesting question, and there are a few. There's not many stats out there, but there's definitely a few interesting facts. So among different healthcare professions, they've done a few studies here and there. So for instance, in emergency department health professionals, they found that there was a relationship that was significant between burnout and job satisfaction. And then there was a positive association between income, economic well-being, and job satisfaction. So kind of an indirect, correlation through there. Separately, there was one that they did in just all healthcare professionals, and they asked them about stress and burnout. And they found that being a contract worker actually helped predict some of the dimensions of burnout. But most interestingly, they did a study among medical trainees. And so burnout severity was associated with increasing levels of financial debt. And as we all know, doing multiple degrees, we're kind of known in healthcare for our increasing levels of debt, the average being about 30,000 student loans for debt in Canada for grad students. And despite this, obviously, financial literacy is super, super poor. And a third of medical trainees have high levels of burnout, and 3/4 of them report being unprepared to handle future financial decisions. To step in, they did a study where they just did some education on 3 basic things, which was debt strategy, behavioral strategy, which involved things like setting goals, calculating worth, looking at budgeting. Then they did investing, and then asset protection, which is basically insurance. And they found that there was actually a large improvement in people's burnout associated stressors.
Oh, wow. That is so interesting. Wow. I didn't know that the average debt now was 30,000 for grad students. That's I think when I graduated too, it was around, like, I was in debt around 30,000 at the time. So I thought it would be higher, I gotta say, but nonetheless, it's still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. And yeah, just the fact that, you can be in so much debt, but your financial literacy be so low, that's quite concerning. So another reason why I love what you guys are doing, and I hope that this brings more attention to it. Um, do you see managing, now that we've talked a bit about burnout, do you see that financial health is a part of one's self-care? And if you do, like, in what way?
Here, but Ryan can probably attest to this, that I find Excel sheets quite calming. I'm a big fan. So, I mean, other than my weird thing with Excel sheets, I think having that, I don't know, to me, self-care and burnout and managing those things is trying to manage or get a handle on the unknown, or at least managing it as much as possible. So I think in a way, kind of budgeting and being prepared, and even getting rid of some of the negative language that can be associated with financial issues. So, a lot of people, see all debt as, like debt is the worst thing you could possibly have. But one of the big things that we tell people is that, there's such a thing as good debt. Like there's certain debt that is actually helping you. Like, the debt you do get into in school is helping you get a job that will help you earn more, which will help you, increase your net worth. Or a mortgage in most places and most times is good debt because it increases your net worth. So even things like that, and kind of framing your mind around your finances that way can help with the burnout a little bit. And then I think personally, I find in clinic, working somewhere where caseloads can fluctuate, knowing that you have a little emergency fund there that is there in case of a rainy day, say that for some reason your schedule is empty for a week or whatnot, or you go away on vacation, you're covered there. It really can, I find that comforting. And if you're kind of, I almost look at it as like you're taking care of a plant, if you will. You're growing something.
Right.
And even though it might not be leaves and soil, it's still something that's growing. And if you're in the US, I guess technically also green. But in Canada, I guess money is multicolored, but that doesn't really apply. But it's one of those things where you're kind of helping cultivate your net worth, if you will. And that I find helps. It's calming for me in that kind of way of avoiding burnout.
Yeah, and do you find that a lot of people, I don't know, that you've interacted with or have educated, do you find that they expect more of a quicker return on their investment of time and practice, or any type of investment in general? Or do you find that people are comfortable enough with seeing the growth over time?
I wouldn't say that people expect a faster return. I think that the biggest thing that when we talk to people is the hesitancy to get started because of the fear of the unknown. They're putting their money into something that they haven't done before. And even when I started in 2014, I remember my first couple months of putting money into, you send it from your bank to this platform and then you invest it, and, you may never see it again, but it's there and it grows. And so I think people are willing to take the long term. It's just they've never really put it in and taken their money into their own hands, kind of thing.
Right. I know, for me, that was a challenge when it was a few years after I graduated. And I found, like, I had all my money in my bank, right? And I felt like at that, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I felt like I didn't have much control over it at the time, and that affected my future decisions regarding my practice as well, right? So just being conscientious of the money you do have, I think, is a big thing. I know people that have no idea, like, how much money they have in their accounts and stuff. And I think it's so important to check in with that almost daily, depending on your practice, or depending on your needs or your goals. I've been trying to get in the habit of doing that, like just checking my statements daily, just so that I'm more aware of what's coming in and what's going out. But for me, it's definitely been a practice over time and with some guidance. Can you guys share a time in your practice or schooling where you kind of felt like your financial health was suffering? And I guess could have potentially led to you burning out?
Yeah, I was, I mean, speaking of, getting out of school with debt, so I graduated with about $70,000 in debt.
Wow.
So I was a bit higher than the norm.
Mhm.
And I think at the beginning that caused a lot of anxiety to, having started that journey of, you know, getting into personal finance and understanding the basic concepts of it after graduation. It was one of those things where I knew, okay, debt is a good thing to get rid of, quote unquote.
Mhm.
So that caused a lot of anxiety with, being a new grad, being in an outpatient setting, and not really having the steady caseload that you might have, even 2-3 years later. So I think that led me to having a lot of anxiety for sure. And I think at the beginning I was trying to say, I'll work, the clinic is open from 7 to 7. Even if I'm scheduled from 12 to 7 on this day, if someone wants to come in at 8, I'll be here and I'll stay here for 11 hours, and it doesn't matter because I need to pay off this debt. And that very quickly changed because I realized that that's completely, it's a very quick road to burnout.
Mhm.
So I think having that, and I don't think I truly had a understanding of, the whole good debt, bad debt thing yet. I just kind of glumped it all together and said, this is important. I need to get rid of it. And I think that quickly, it could have led to, a really big burnout. But luckily, I think with some guidance from my then girlfriend and now wife, I was very quick to change that and kind of slow down a little bit and realize that this will happen with time. And I kind of stopped myself short, luckily, of that burnout.
I'll say a couple things. One is that grad debt, the average student debt after finishing grad school, that's across all graduate programs. And in healthcare, I'm fairly certain that it would be significantly higher because we don't get paid to do things like TA.
Right.
So I think that ours is going to be a little bit more, so maybe closer to the averages on those ones.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite remarkable. Like I mean, I'm kind of blown away by all of this. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not as versed as you guys in all of this. So feel free to add in any more. But I love the concept of good debt, bad debt, and reframing the language around debt in general, because like you, Giacomo, I would like back then when I graduated, I thought like all debt was bad, right? Like for me, and there was a lot of pressure, and my mom stepped in and kind of paid off my debt. And then I paid her back over time, which I was fortunate to be able to do that, knowing that I had a job that was secure. I did know that, but I think to see like $70,000, for example, like it's hard to break that down, I guess you could say. It would take a lot of discipline and a lot of resourcefulness and guidance, I would think.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things that I think I had to realize. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm sitting here trying to say that I like ate ramen for every meal and
No, no, I.
put all my money towards debt. And it was one of those things that was hard and it struggled and I went up and down too. So
Mm.
the debt repayment road is it's a long one and it's important, but definitely I think framing to help with that burnout, the framing side of it, and thinking about good debt, bad debt is really a good way to go about it because it really helps. It helps take the guilt out of the debt, I think, a little bit, and knowing that it was a good decision. So you made this good decision, and you're gonna have to, you have to pay for the good decision.
Yep.
But it was a good decision to make, and it helped me work through that way, big time.
Yeah, for sure. And uh, I could see also the anxiety around the future too, like you said, the uncertainty in a way earlier, but also just the anxiety of seeing just a bigger amount at once. So speaking of that and that uncertainty, can you guys share any like simple tips right now that people can do, students or professionals, when it comes to just simply managing their finances and not even like, and not being afraid to do that? Do you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes when we don't have the literacy, we kind of avoid it.
Yeah, for sure. There was a few things that everyone should kind of take a look at right away. And the first thing that everyone should do is take a look at their budget. Budgeting is something that, as Giacomo will tell you, it gets a bad rap, because between us, he's the budgeting expert. But knowing is power. And we have a great financial toolkit that Giacomo designed that you can download for free from the website when you sign up. And it'll help you basically track your net worth. It'll help you determine what's going in, what's going out. And it'll also help you then do things down the line, such as control your debt management, which is another one of the big things. We put out an episode and a blog called the five pillars of finance, mostly for new grads, but they're definitely for everybody. Knowing how to basically just have a plan for getting out of debt so that you don't have to do it today or tomorrow, but having that plan definitely helps, helps you sleep at night a little bit more, just knowing you're working towards the goal. Another one would be emergency planning. So anybody who had a well put together emergency fund going into this pandemic is definitely a little bit easier, is definitely sleeping a little bit better than anybody who had to borrow from lines of credit, because they're going to have a longer time paying off debt. So that's another big one as well. Take a look at your insurance, because it's basically protection against things that can really hamper you and your net worth if something kind of comes up from there. And then investing, just take a look at your investing, and if you're doing any, that's great. Take a look at what you're paying and where you're doing it from. And if there's anywhere, we have some great blogs and podcasts on where you can save some money and help build your net worth if you're paying lower fees, for sure.
Awesome. So now, do you guys offer these services as well, like privately on top of what you do as physios, or are you just more providing the education around it? Like, you're not technically financial advisors as well, right? Or am I missing?
Yeah, we're not licensed financial advisors. We will start most of our blogs with, this is simply for educational advice, and if you have more specific questions and there's certain things you really want to dig into, we always suggest speaking to what we call a fiduciary advisor. So someone that typically we don't love the big banks kind of as a rule at Allied Health Financial. And if that's what people are comfortable with, we say that's great. It's a good start. And it's a good place to begin your financial career. But what a fiduciary advisor is usually someone who you pay per visit, kind of like you would be going to see a physio, chiro, RMT sort of thing, to help you with your financial plan. They're not going to push you towards investing into stock A, stock B, mutual fund A, ETF. They're not going to push you into certain investments because they don't get paid a commission to suggest certain investments. You're just paying them for your financial plan. So that's usually our suggestion. But we find that most people, especially when early on, either new grads or before family, things get really complicated. Even with some basic sort of things and reading through the website, you can get most of the things done on your own. And at least kind of educate yourself. So when you go speak, if you do decide to go speak to a financial advisor, you've kind of got those tools to speak their language a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a great point, because for myself, when I left the bank that I was with for so many years, for me, it was more that I had like investments and like GICs and things like that. And I would meet with them, and I just found like nothing was being really done. And I also didn't understand, like I wasn't really being educated through the process too. I think that was a big part of it. And then I really felt like I couldn't control my finances because of that. So I kind of felt a bit just uneducated and disempowered that way. And then I ended up finding a financial advisor who I've been with now for 7 years or so. And she's wonderful because she educates me along the way. So I find she also helps with the planning part a little bit, but she has a financial advisor as well. So when it comes to investments and things like that, but to trust somebody with your finances is a really big thing. I think people would have a hard time, for the most part, finding someone they could connect with and invest with. So guys, tell me something about like renting and purchasing a home. I always get into this conversation and debate with people. So myself, I personally rent. But I know you've put out a blog on this and I did read it at the time. But can you share your thoughts or perspectives? I know it depends on certain factors, but can you kind of give us a bit of a, I guess, just an overthought on all of it? Because I think this will apply to many new grads, students, or young professionals right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We can kind of give you the Coles notes there. So when you're renting, the advantages are one, it's on average a lower cost than you would with your mortgage. And you can also make your housing cost, which is typically the biggest individual column on your budget in terms of expenses, you can fix that, which basically means that you know exactly how much it's going to cost you every single month. The benefits of buying or owning is one, you get to build equity because part of your mortgage payment is going to interest, but the other part is going to what they call the principal, which actually builds up the equity or what you own inside the home value. And then the second part, which is the big one, is the capital gain. So as the market goes up, your house will um, appreciate, sorry, and you get to keep that tax free if you live inside the home. The downside of renting is you don't get those same benefits. So it's an all negative to your net worth in terms of your rental payment. But the downside of owning is you're responsible for all maintenance. So roof, appliances, all that falls on you. Those costs are usually in the thousands, sometimes in the tens of thousands. And there's also the additional costs of property taxes and maintenance costs on top of the property insurance and utilities that would be universal across. So we basically took a comparison in the blog and we said if you wanted to buy a $550,000 house, you'd have an $80,000 down payment, and we compared the two. So the owner got to take the $80,000 down payment and then pay down their mortgage, and the renter got to take that $80,000 and then invest it, and then take the difference between what they would both pay. And because the renter's not paying as much, they got to invest that money as well. And at the end of 10 years, the renter came out about $60,000 ahead of the buyer, but the buyer, we didn't factor in the capital gain.
Okay.
So that's the unknown. So at the end of the day, it's a personal choice, much like everything we say. It depends on your risk tolerance and your comfort and how much control you want to have. Absolutely. The other thing is down payments take significant time and effort to accumulate.
Yeah. And I think too, with the capital gain too, like in appreciation, it just depends on the market as well at that time. If you end up selling and, compared to what you bought your home at. For me, I've just found renting, but again, it's more shorter term, right? Like I'm not thinking as far long term, and that's why I rent right now. But I'm kind of now considering purchasing. So, so thank you for sharing more about that, because that actually very much simplified it for me very easily. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah. So tell me, like, do you guys think us as healthcare providers working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, let's say a minimum full-time hours, do you think like that's enough income to retire off of peacefully, considering the risk to our health every day when we go into work?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And a little bit of that depends on what your retirement goals are. Like, do you just want to live in the same house that you've been, either paying mortgage on or renting, and just kind of go by your normal day-to-day life? Or do you want to, travel the world and that sort of thing? So you have to figure that part out a little bit. But one of the big things that Ryan and I both struggled with, I think, getting into physio, and especially in the outpatient environment, is that your earnings as a new grad are tied to your percentage and your caseload, both of which are typically low, on the low end of the spectrum. And then as you get more experienced and people start coming back or referring to you, your percentage increases as you get more experience, and that's usually how you get those raises every year. And then your caseload might be a little bit busier. So then and it's a great problem to have. But by the end of it, you might have reached the max of the percentage of the clinic. This is as high as they can go to maintain their margins and keep their doors open and have a job for you. And your caseload is maxed. Like, you can't see more than X number of people in a day because there's only so many hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't reach that passive, or if we don't have a way to achieve that passive income through investing, whether it's in ETFs or stocks, bonds, or GICs, or however you choose to invest, if you basically usually quite quickly reach a plateau in your earnings. And if you're not working, you're not earning. If you go away on vacation, you aren't earning anything, and then you typically come back to a slower caseload. So having that ability to reach that, gain that passive income, I think is really important, from the increasing your net worth or your earnings every year. But typically, without investing, and then ideally investing early, it's hard to have your nest egg grow enough to have a pretty comfortable retirement. And a lot of healthcare professionals that worked in the public sector or in hospitals have usually the benefit of some kind of a pension plan, and it's usually quite a sturdy one. But if you're not in that public environment, you kind of need to kind of take care of yourself, quote unquote, and start investing to be able to grow that nest egg to be able to retire.
Yeah. So passive income, then, how would you define that? When you talk about passive income, are you talking about investments?
Well, passive income by definition is any income you earn while you're not working.
Right.
So in theory, in mostly how we've talked about it, is definitely investments. A lot of people will talk about, different side hustles, if you will, where they can, they might put out a book, or they might release a product or something like that is selling, and they're not building each product. They have an inventory, and then it sells. Or if you think about it, opening your own clinic then can hopefully lead to passive income, because you have people who are working at the clinic, seeing patients, there's money coming through the door, and then you take the profit. So in our standpoint right now, how we think of passive income is definitely more on the investment side of things. Yeah. But definitely there's multitudes of ways to get there, for sure.
Yeah. I know a colleague too recently who, pretty much exactly what you said, works in the private sector, owning their own clinic actually, but was also treating, not just overseeing, and burnt out basically, and has now pivoted. So she's still treating and she's still seeing patients, but she now owns a clinic and is now bringing other practitioners in, so that she could probably earn some passive income right now. So, because otherwise she was just plateauing, right? She just couldn't invest any more time in her income anymore. It was just, otherwise she was just burning out like crazy. So I think it's so important, again, for professionals to understand that possibility as well, that we don't have to stay just in the direct care environment if that's not what's going to help us achieve freedom or fulfillment in any way, shape, or form, right? Or compromise their health, I should say. So tell me, what are your favorite self-care tips that help keep you guys passionate about your career, but still now also allow you the time to share your knowledge with other healthcare professionals on financial health and freedom?
Self-care tips. That's a good question. For me, it's probably, I know I need to be strong enough and able to do my job. So a little bit of exercise each day. But the thing that's probably most important to me is I spend, at least half an hour reading before bed. So I limit my screens, and I'm just educating myself about one thing or another, and get a good night's sleep, because no matter how stressed you are, it's always a little bit easier to manage if you got a good night's sleep under your belt, for sure.
Awesome. What about you?
But definitely, I definitely echo the exercise side of thing. I'm like, if you can, I'm as amateur as you can get with triathlon. So I do a few races kind of every year, and I don't come close to winning, but I do finish most of them. So any kind of biking or running or swimming is a big, I guess not so much swimming right now, but any kind of exercise is a big outlet for me. And then similar to Ryan, most of my books are audiobooks when either biking or running or podcasts. I find they're a good way to kind of be a little bit more introspective and kind of think about things that aren't physio or finance related for a little bit, and just kind of focus on my mind on some other things.
That's awesome. Good for you guys. And what is your advice now, just to close things out in a moment? What's your advice then to healthcare providers who are struggling with financial sources of burnout right now? Like, I know you have a lot of resources, so I definitely recommend they direct themselves to that. But what kind of advice can you give them, or words of encouragement?
I think that the most important thing is, I mean, that's why we started Allied Health, which was to bring education to people who, kind of, you just didn't know. So the biggest thing is just get started with your financial journey, which is educating yourself is the most powerful thing that you can do. So you can tell if something is beneficial for you or not to your financial health. If you went to the doctor and the doctor offered you a treatment, if you knew about that treatment, you could tell if it was, going to be something in line with your best interest or not. But when you walk into your bank, you may not know if they hand you something in front of you and you don't understand the document or know how to read the returns or the investment fee percentages or stuff like that. So getting started, building a plan, because when you have a plan, everything becomes a little bit easier and you can just follow step by step as your plan gets executed from now till then. And it's a huge stress reliever.
Awesome. Any other words, Giacomo, or do you echo that?
I definitely echo it. I would also say the big thing is to start. Whether that's starting by reading our blogs or listening to the podcast or picking up a personal finance book or talking to a colleague or a friend, just the paralysis of analysis with this stuff is gargantuan. So, pick something. If you're struggling with the debt side and the emergency fund side and the investing side and the insurance side, that can be really overwhelming. So pick one thing, kind of take care of it, tie a bow on it, and move on to the next thing. And at least that way you're able to compartmentalize it a little bit. And then in terms of to help your listeners find one place where they can get a lot of the things that we talked about today, we'll put together a link on our website. If you just go to alliedhealthfinancial.ca/HCP, they'll be able to find everything that we've talked about there today. So anything that, any of the resources or blogs or podcasts, that way it's an easier place to start. But yeah, I would say anywhere, just start somehow. And if there's anything, talk to your friends about it, because they have the same questions. And it's one of those things that people have a lot of anxieties about talking about money, whether it's, their financial situation or the percentage that they earn at their clinic. Just talk about it and normalize it a little bit. Because you'll see that a lot of people are likely in the same boat that you're in.
Exactly. And just connecting with others over it. So if people wanted to reach out to you directly, could they also contact you through social media in addition to your website?
Yep, definitely. You can find us on Instagram at AHFCAN. We're on LinkedIn as Allied Health Financial, Twitter as Allied Health Financial, and I'm missing one, Facebook as Allied Health Financial. There's also a Facebook group that you can sign into, and if you're a healthcare practitioner in Canada, you'll be granted access. And there's other healthcare practitioners to speak to there. If you want to get in touch with us specifically, you can either message us through social or just send us an email at info@alliedhealthfinancial.ca, and we're always happy to chat in any way that we can, but not provide financial advice.
Awesome.
Directly.
No, I get that. And what is the name of the Facebook group, if people wanted to search that?
It is I'm freezing here. It's the Allied Health Financial Lounge.
Okay. Lounge.
That's what it's called.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome.
And if it's not called that, I will change the name to it.
And again, they could just reach out to you guys on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter too. So they can ask for the Facebook group directly from you as well. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I've learned a lot in just a short period of time, and I really like how you guys are making this educational, but also enjoyable. and meeting people kind of where they're at in their journey and just guiding them through from where they're starting from. So thank you guys so much for all the work you're doing, and I look forward to keeping in touch and connecting with you still on social.
Thanks so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care, guys. So if you guys like this podcast, please subscribe and leave an honest review. Your feedback means everything to me. Your reviews are what moves this podcast forward, and I always appreciate receiving them. If you want to get a hold of me directly, reach out to me on social media. My handles are in the show notes, and you can always subscribe to my weekly newsletters at jennifergeorge.co so that we can stay connected. So until next time, thank you guys so much again for your ongoing support.